We are saying goodbye to 2025 and hello to 2026. And with that in mind, I think it's time to take a look at the state of conservatism. It's time to spill some sweet tea. Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sweet Tea series. My name is Ariana Guajardo. Thank you guys for joining me today. We are in DC, so you'll notice the background is a little bit different. And today I want to talk about the state of conservatism. We have the State of the Union address, everyone knows. In your states, like in Texas, we have the State of the State address. But right now there's a lot going on in the conservative movement. I think it's changed over the past year, and I want to review what's happened and also take a look at some of the top stories from this year. And with me to help me do that is Virginia Allen. Welcome to the show.
Ariana, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you are a reporter for the Daily Signal and also a host of the Problematic Women podcast. So tell me a little bit about that show, because it's a very similar vibe, I think, to this one.
Absolutely. So Problematic Women exists, similar to, I think, Sweet Tea, to be a voice for conservatism, and specifically really for conservative women. So it was back in 2016, there was a leftist magazine that published an article saying, what do we do? And it literally used the term problematic women. What do we do about problematic women like Kellyanne Conway or Megyn Kelly, women who are strong, successful in their careers, have a loud voice in the political space, but yet they're not spewing leftist talking points, they're pro-life, they're pro-traditional values, they're pro-America. And so with that idea, my predecessor, Kelsey Buller, she said, you know what, we should start a podcast called Problematic Women and just lean into that identity that as conservative women, we're problematic and we're proud of it. So that was, 9 years ago. We have been running with the show since then, and in its current form, I co-host it with my colleague Elise McHugh, as well as Morgan McMichael, a Turning Point USA contributor, and we just have a ton of fun bringing guests on, powerful female voices from across the conservative movement.
And I would describe that more as a talk show kind of format, right? Because it's usually like 3 or 4 of you guys in a room at the time.
Exactly.
And you've had some pretty awesome guests and also co-hosts, like Isabel Brown is regularly on the show.
Yes.
And then Morgan, I got to meet her this year when I was at the Young Women's Leadership Summit.
Oh,
so all that to say, you have a wonderful cast of people who get to come through.
We are very blessed and spoiled.
Now, so how long have you been with Daily Signal?
I have been with the Daily Signal for about 5.5 years, which is wild. I interned as a young person after moving to Washington, D.C. I interned at the Heritage Foundation. They were kind enough to give me a job, and so I worked in their comm shop for 2 years and then transitioned right at the beginning of COVID to the Daily Signal team. So it was a wild time to become a journalist. We were all working from home and trying to figure out what was happening in our world, but never a boring moment, and right away started covering a lot of culture issues as well as border and immigration, and have continued covering that issue of border and immigration to this day.
Well, I know you're obviously based out of D.C. now, but where did you grow up for then?
So I have a weird split background.
Okay.
I was born in Massachusetts, spent a good chunk of my childhood in New Hampshire, so in New England, and then when I was 12, my family moved south and spent about 7 years mainly in Georgia, went to high school in Georgia. So I should, by all rights, sound like a Bostonian when I speak, and yet when I'm trying to be overly friendly, when I meet people, I have this southern accent that comes out. So
well, if you're from like the Georgia area or grew up, I was going to say that you were familiar with Sweet Tea.
Oh, yes. No, it's funny. I actually remember the very first time I ever went to Chick-fil-A and got Sweet Tea, because in the North we have iced tea, but we don't have sweet tea. So the whole concept of putting sugar in tea was very foreign, but it's very addictive.
Well, this one obviously isn't from Texas, but we need to try it. This is my first time trying this one. You ready to do cheers instead?
Cheers.
Cheers.
I love it.
Yeah, let's see if it's
very sweet. It's good.
It's sweet, yeah.
Yeah, but
I couldn't find the ice machine, though, to add, so I feel like that's what's missing right now.
It's still very good.
While I've been in TC, I got to go get tea with my friend, like an afternoon tea, which is awesome because it's still, I'm not sure when this is going to air, either like after or before Christmas.
Yeah.
But right here in DC, everything is Christmas decorated. Yes. So it was a little holiday tea. It was awesome. Would recommend if you guys come out here. But one of the awesome things about where you're positioned here at DC is you get to see a lot of the national stories happening. So let's talk a little bit about that, where it was a 2025 started, it was a new year, a new administration. we're a year out now. What are some of the biggest wins the administration has had? And then what are some of the things that people are still looking to happen in the future?
Yeah, so in covering border and immigration, I have to start there because I think, this was a campaign promise. President Trump, from, the very, very beginning on the campaign trail, was clear this is going to be number one on my agenda, to deport the more than 10 million illegal aliens who have entered the country under President Joe Biden, and to secure the border, to stop this influx. And we saw literally on day one, President Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border, and he ended catch and release, that policy that literally just paroled millions of illegal aliens into the country. And so these were top priorities right away that he took action on. And then the results have spoken for themselves, that, we have seen numbers of encounters alone plummet at the southern border, which is really a testament to that messaging strategy that Trump has been clear, the border is closed, don't come. That message is out. People are not coming. And then, for those that are showing up at the border, they're not releasing anyone into the United States. I think since May, I believe, there's been 0 releases. So, this crackdown. And then you have the apprehension side, where ICE is actively seeking to arrest and deport illegal aliens, at least initially with a special focus on criminal illegal aliens. There's about 500,000, I believe, arrest and deportations that they've made, and then another 1.5 million illegal aliens have chosen to self-deport. So 2 million, they have a lot of work left to do, I'll be honest with that. They're trying to get at least 10 million people out, and there's a lot of pressure that ICE and those agents are under to pick up the speed even more. So I think we're going to see that increase as they're hiring 10,000 new agents. So you can tell I'm passionate about this. I'm going down the rabbit hole of border and immigration. But I think that is by far one of the biggest wins, and that the American people recognize that there were promises made and really promises kept in that regard.
And I'm glad you started with the border because, well, 2 reasons. One, being in Texas, that's our neighbor, and we do a lot of policy at TPPF dealing with Mexico. And there was also the foreign terrorist designations that came up as well.
Huge.
And I think that that's what we're seeing now is how the Trump administration is going to utilize certain groups being declared FTOs and what's how that's going to allow them to handle the cartel terrorists.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely allowing them to be a lot more targeted and specific. We could get into the boat strikes in Venezuela, and that's a whole other issue that obviously has drawn a lot of attention, a lot of criticism. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to this mission of not only let's prevent illegal aliens from entering the country, but also let's stop that flow of drugs into the United States that have literally taken hundreds of thousands of lives in recent years. And that's something that the president has been so clear that he's passionate about.
The other reason why I think so many people were concerned about this issue wasn't just for their own safety, because to be very clear, it did threaten the safety of a lot of different communities, especially those closer to the border. But there was also the trafficking issue. So this wasn't just dangerous for Americans, but this was a funnel for people being trafficked from other countries throughout the United States. But recently, I heard Tom Homan was talking about the number of kids that have been found. Do you remember, was that
62,000?
Wow.
Yeah. So
that was shocking.
It is shocking. And I mean, it's tragic that there was even that many to be found in the first place. And I mean, there's many, many more to be found. But the system that we saw underneath the previous administration was kids would arrive and minors would arrive at the southern border alone, and then a sponsor would raise their hand and say, hey, I'll take the child, essentially. And these kids were released to sometimes very distant family members. Sometimes there was no family relation whatsoever. And while some were released to family and they're fine and they've been found to be safe, others were put in, forced labor situations, in sex trafficking situations. And there was no really system in place in the Biden administration to ensure that these kids were safe once they were placed. There was, a phone call made, and if no one answered the phone, well, it's too bad. And so these kids were just lost. And Tom Homan has discussed that, this has been the greatest challenge for him as borders are, is finding these kids because they don't have credit cards, they don't have mortgages that they're paying, they don't have a digital footprint. So to track down these kids when sponsors listed addresses that were, sometimes office parks or storage units or churches or fast food restaurants, to try and find these young people is a huge challenge, but obviously well worth the time and resources of this administration to make sure these kids are okay.
And then this year, one of the things that I've been loving your coverage on is on the border, and specifically the video content that's come out of that. So which border did you guys go visit this year?
Yeah, so we were down in Texas earlier this year.
Texas is huge, though. So which part of the border? That's like half the state.
We were in El Paso.
Okay.
And had the privilege of going down there and interviewing the Border Patrol chief down there, and then just being in that community. And I think that was my third time being in El Paso. And so I had seen it during the previous administration. I had seen how wild and crazy and intense it was, and the people crossing. So then to see the difference of a border that is secure and quiet, and to talk with agents that told me, hey, we're actually a little bored. Like we're so thankful that people aren't coming and we're able to do our job. But talk about night and day difference. And I think so many of those agents are just really thankful that they are able to do the job now that they signed up to do, which is secure the border.
And I have a friend, a lot of people, I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, so a lot of people work in the border security. I have one friend who was in customs earlier this year, and she was just talking about the difference that she's felt in terms of resources and their abilities. But have you guys made your way down to the Rio Grande Valley yet?
Yes. Well, okay, so... Basically, not in a long time.
I just think the next time you guys go, let me know.
Okay.
Because that's where I'm from, and I can at least tell you where to stop and eat on your way there.
That would be great, because there's amazing food along the border. I have to say, every single time we go down, it's like, okay, where are the restaurants that the locals eat at? And that's always where we try to go.
But also the type of Mexican food is different because it's different regions. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Next time you're in the RGV, let me know. I'll see if we can double up on a trip when it's down there.
I absolutely will. That would be fantastic.
So obviously border security was a huge thing. But in addition to a new administration, for Catholics throughout the country and throughout the world, we have a new pope. So that was another 2025 thing. So new year meant new president. It meant a new pope.
Yeah.
But along with that, I think that there has been a little bit of a religious revival happening, especially among conservatives and younger conservatives. Yeah. Have you noticed that as well?
I absolutely have. And I think it was highlighted even more so after Charlie Kirk's assassination, where you saw prayer breaking out on college campuses. And you saw people posting videos on social media saying, I haven't gone to church in years, but I saw the faith that Charlie Kirk had. I saw his legacy. He had something that I want, so I'm going to go to church. And I think that's just been powerful to watch out of such extreme tragedy. Really a group of millennials, of Gen Z, of America's young people saying, you know what, we actually really need God, and we need the Christian values that people like Charlie Kirk lived by. And so that has been incredibly encouraging. And I do think it's scriptural, right? As the dark gets darker, the light gets lighter. We're promised this in Scripture. We're never promised an easy life, but we're promised that in the midst of all the craziness, that God will be working, that He'll be moving. And I think that's exactly what we have seen this year, that, as we continue to, fight as a country against things like gender ideology and abortion and just a lot of division, quite frankly, that we're also seeing in many ways just a return back to not just American values, but biblical values.
And I'm glad you bring up the Charlie Kirk assassination, because that was, I agree, a pivot point, and also just exemplifying one of the things that we're seeing within 2025 and that trend towards people finding religion. But it was an interesting moment for conservatives, and it's had ripple effects that I wasn't expecting. So I remember when it happened, it was during the workday, and so we had the TVs in our office, and everyone was just watching, trying to see if he was still alive or not, because we were still missing pieces of reporting. But one thing that someone remarked was that this almost seems like the equivalent of 9/11 for Gen Z in our generation, because most of my generation wasn't born for that event, and the ones who were, like myself, we just don't have that kind of memory.
Yeah.
But there was that weird different moment of unity that happened right afterwards, and a lot of conservatives who had quarrels in the past, putting those aside. I think Tim Pool was even talking about some of the people that called him and was like, hey man, we need to set this down, come back to the basics, and realize that we're all on the same team fighting for the stuff, and that there's bigger problems at stake.
Yeah. If only we could stay there.
I know, and that's the other thing. And that's where I was thinking about this concept of the state of conservatism.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, there's this increase in Christian values. People are trying to like turn to faith, see what does that mean for someone who's young and Gen Z. Do we need to I think marriage has been a topic people are talking about a lot more too. But on the other hand, it seems like there's been a little division on the right around the events of Charlie Kirk.
No, there absolutely have been.
Have you felt that as well? Because you speak to a lot of people, especially with problematic women. How has that affected your, I guess, relationships and like working with other people in the conservative movement?
Yeah, I think it's been, personally, I feel like for those that I work with at the Daily Signal that are a part of the problematic women family, people have been very united in, one, recognizing how horrific that day was, recognizing the power of Charlie Kirk's legacy, that's something that is really in some ways a responsibility to carry forward. And yet we're watching kind of these fringes of the conservative movement, even people who aren't in the conservative movement but claim to be so, that are, I'll just say, honestly, taking the horrific situation of the Charlie Kirk assassination and trying to use it for their own advantage, trying to spin it in such a way that gets them more views, more likes, and just more attention. And I think it's really unfortunate because they're missing the entire message of Charlie Kirk's life when they do that, of living a life that is, at the end of the day, all for God's glory and about others and about ensuring that this country endures. So that has been interesting to see play out. I'm heartened by the fact that I think outside of kind of the microcosm of social media world and all that craziness, by and large, that Americans recognize, okay, this was a moment, and we can continue to kind of pull on the strength of that moment to walk in unity as a country, to live out those values and principles. And yet, those voices that are adding controversy and tension to the situation remain very loud.
Yeah, and it's been weird on the right online, but then also, I think we also have to talk about how this wasn't an isolated incident now of violence. Like, this is after the attempt on Trump, and then we had this someone assassinated Charlie, and now there was the shooting at Brown University happening here at the end of the year.
Yeah, so tragic.
And she was, I think, vice president of a TPUSA chapter.
Yeah, of her, of the university, Americans Republican.
Okay, it was a college Republican one. Okay,
it was a college Republicans chapter. Yeah, I mean, only 19 years old, a sophomore, very devout Catholic. And just, tragic. Someone who I was just scrolling right after it happened, scrolling through X, and people who had known her were posting about how generous she was, what a kind young woman. Any loss of life is tragic, but I think, we feel that deeply when you look at a young life that is really taking ownership of their life. They're trying to do everything they can to glorify God, to make their family proud, and then to have a life snuffed out in an instant because of senseless violence that didn't need to happen. Heartbreaking.
And I've talked about this before on the show, but I really think that one of the reasons why we're seeing this kind of violence is for years, younger people, like Gen Z, I think, grew up with this narrative that things like silence is violence, or that your words are violent. And whenever you attach things like words and saying that they're inherently violent, then that suddenly means that retaliation and anything that you do is actually a form of self-defense.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what's going on right now mentally with people who are engaging in this kind of violence.
Yes.
So what I'm hoping we do on the conservative side is we continue to be outspoken in our private lives, because I think it's so weird. It's too far. It's too late right now to keep having this idea that politics and religion don't belong at the dinner table. If anything, those are the things we should be talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you can't talk about it with your family and the people you care about, how can we have these conversations with others?
Yeah, which was Charlie Kirk's entire model. I'll keep going back to him because I think it just highlighted so much. And there's been clips that have resurfaced of Charlie Kirk literally saying this, of people pressing him on, essentially accusing him of spewing hateful language. It's like, we need to have conversations. We need to have debates. And it's okay if my words offend you, because we need to have those conversations so that acts of violence, physical violence, is not carried out, is avoided. And when we can see you're a human, I'm a human, and we can disagree, and that's okay, then we can move past that, rage of emotion of we disagree and I need to take action against you. And that is the message that Charlie lived, and hopefully as a country we can remember and get back to. But at least this year it has proven to be a really somber reminder that we're not there yet. We have a long way to go.
Yeah, and it also does show, like, the division that we're seeing now on the right. I think it shows what significant figure Charlie Kirk was and how he really was a giant of a man that we're now just trying. There's a vacuum there. And I think that's why we're seeing voices highlighted in a way that they wouldn't have been before, and ones that I don't want to keep, naming names or have to, cause tension for no reason. But, figures, I'll actually just say it, figures like Nick Fuentes coming up right now, I think are as a result of that kind of vacuum and people looking for some kind of direction and stuff. So I think next year we'll see where that plays out.
Yeah, no, I think we will. Those are voices that are not going away. I would argue, they are not in the conservative movement. They are on the fridges, and they have... Well,
especially when you're not even economically conservative.
Yeah.
That's
square one.
Right. So if you're liking the socialist mentality of stuff, then I'm okay with us having conversations with people on the left, but I think we need to identify that that's what they are. But that's just me being a little controversial today. But let's talk about some of the other stuff this year that actually aligned with some of Charlie Kirk's messages too. One of the things he cared a lot about was family and family values, and talking about why young people should get married and the value of that.
Yeah.
And I think this year we've seen the culture outside of politics catch up to that. So Taylor Swift's engagement, Charlie XCX got married, not Millie Bobby Brown anymore. She is Millie Bonnie Bon Jovi, adopted a baby.
For her.
And did you hear about any of the criticism she was getting for being too young to be adopting a baby?
Oh my goodness, I did not. She was, wow, that's wild. How old is she?
I think she's 21 or 22 right now. So she's younger, especially when she got married and adopted a baby. But it is interesting how this is a young woman who clearly has a full career. She's married. But
financially stable, probably.
Yes, exactly. But do you think that we're seeing a change right now in people's perceptions of marriage?
Absolutely. This is something we've talked about on Problematic Women, that there is a real shift happening within our culture as we watch celebrities really embrace that marriage life. And I do, most of the time when I'm talking about social media, I'm hating on it because I think it's the root of so many of our cultural problems. But I do think it has been a benefit in a regard to an extent with kind of mom influencers and this elevation of recognizing, hey, there is actually real beauty in motherhood. And, sometimes I have problems with those influencers because they paint, a pretty rosy, glossy picture of what it all looks like. And it's messy and it's crazy and wild and it's exhausting. And there's so much goodness in it. And there's so much reward and fulfillment. So I feel like we saw, with the last presidential election, we saw all these young male voters turning out to support President Trump because they were seeing, okay, I'm not being represented on the left, but there's a whole movement, a whole political movement that supports me in my masculinity, that wants to see me take ownership, that's telling me I need to work hard to provide, essentially that's calling me into manhood. And I think we are starting to, I have hope for, that we're starting to see the same thing with young women who are recognizing, okay, what I have been told from the left of, don't get married, don't have kids, have a high power career, damn the patriarchy, all those things, that now it's wait a second, I've done everything that the left told me to do and I'm still not happy. So maybe there is something to marriage. Maybe there is something to having a family, and that's beautiful. And I hope we continue in that trend. Again, we have a long way to go.
We do. And what I'm wondering too, everyone was so excited for Taylor Swift's engagement. I think it was a good culture unifying American thing. But what I'm wondering is, are young women going to see from this message of, wow, this is awesome, this is something that's made her life fulfilling, I should aspire to that too? Or will it be, this is cool, she had a whole career first and then waited this long, and then this is something I should think about?
Fair, maybe a little bit of both.
TBD 2026, we'll recap and see what happens.
Yeah, well, and I feel a little hypocritical since I, in my early 30s, I'm not married, I've had a whole career. So I'm I don't know that I can quite say, but that's not necessarily, I think, yes, people have a choice as far as when they get married, and there's those life circumstances that's you might really want to get married at 24.
But I'm glad you're bringing that up too. I think that there's this weird thing happening on the right as well, where there's younger women who are criticizing women in their 30s who aren't married yet, and they're not having grace for, like, that doesn't mean that you're not wanting to get married.
Totally.
And I think that there's definitely room, and we need to calm down a little bit and say marriage is a great thing, but that doesn't mean that everyone is, who's called to marriage is called to marriage right now.
Yeah.
And this is a part of, if we are going to also be talking about relying on Christ and God's timing and coming back to faith, this is a component of that.
It is.
And trusting that if this is my vocation, God's going to have it in the right time.
Yeah, so much of it is the Lord's timing. And I think, this is a topic and a conversation that I feel like I have at least once a week with female friends, the marriage conversation for those that are desiring it, and it hasn't happened yet. And, there's so many layers to that. I think there's so many reasons why we're constantly dissecting, is it guys' fault? Is it girls' fault? Is it culture's fault? And, there's truth to it all. And at the end of the day, though, it's like, all right, the thing that we're asked to do is say, God, I surrender and I trust you and I'll follow your leading.
Amen. We need more of that. And again, this is where I wanted to talk about the state of conservatism, because I feel like that's where some of the conflict comes in sometimes. And I don't know, is it bad that I'm like, can we find the peace, guys? And, have a little grace for each other. We're figuring it out.
No, it's funny. Sometimes I joke, by nature, I don't feel like I'm a super controversial person, but I live in Washington, D.C., and I co-host a podcast called Problematic Women. And so it's all right, we live in a controversial world where there are so many topics that are big topics of disagreement and tension. And at the end of the day, there's something powerful about finding the areas of agreement and recognizing, at the end of the day, so many people that are butting heads are doing so because they have different visions of kind of what the good is, of what that higher value is. And I've said this about living in D.C. Most people that move here, they don't always stay this way, but they move here because they're passionate. You might not agree with what they're passionate about, their motives for wanting to change the world, the ways they want to change the world, but people come and choose to be a part of the political space, whether in D.C. or at a think tank in Texas, that they want to be a part of impact. They want to be a part of change. And that's a beautiful thing. Again, sometimes the ways they want to change the world are not so great, but the passion is beautiful.
And I think one thing, I'm glad that you're saying that, because an area where that helped me be able to talk to people when I was still on campus about issues like the pro-life one was starting with common ground, which is, at the end of the day, what do you want the end result to be? You want for kids to have happy families, and for moms who have babies to be able to take care of them. Yeah. So I'm glad that you're talking about that, finding common ground in what we're wanting is the world to be a better place.
It's huge.
Now we can talk about if your worldview actually would make it a better place or not, but at least we have that in common.
Yeah, we both have the same end mission, just the means of getting there are very different. Yeah.
Sometimes
same mission, not always.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well, let's broaden this out a little bit to some of the global stuff that's happened this year. So, we talked about the border and how that's happened, but one of the other things that you brought up that's been a big thing this year was, I guess Israel and Ukraine. But one of that being the hostage releases.
Absolutely. So I'm privileged. One of the other hats that I wear at the Daily Signal is reporting on issues of foreign policy and national security. And so since October 7th, I have been reporting on the war between Hamas and Israel and just following so many of the stories of the hostages. I've had the privilege of sitting with many family members, former hostages themselves. And when I have a very clear memory early on, shortly, maybe 3 months after October 7th, just sitting on my couch, I've been looking at all these pictures of hostages and just having to put the computer aside and stop and just weep. Because when people start to become more than just a name on a screen, you're like, okay, these are people with siblings who maybe have kids, who are just living very normal lives.
Right.
And the way that their whole world was turned upside down, ended in many cases, just tragic. And so to follow that story, these personal stories of the hostages all the way through until October 13th, when we saw the remaining 20 hostages released, just incredibly powerful, and felt like such an honor to be like, wow, I got to be a part of sharing their stories. And now, praise God, they are home with their families. And, of course, many had much more tragic endings, and 1,200 individuals died on October 7th, and more in captivity in Gaza. And we're, at least at the point we're having this conversation, technically the war's not over. There's a peace deal in effect. We're waiting to get to that second phase for that to be negotiated. There's so many layers there of history and tension. That could be a whole other podcast series. But really encouraging to see the faces that, individuals that I had looked at the beginning of this year. There were 3 Americans that were still captive in Gaza, and to see all of them this year in 2025 released, just incredibly powerful to see those moments of reunification. And those are the moments that give you some hope for humanity, and nice once in a while as a reporter to get to just hear something positive. So, that was probably one of the biggest international news stories of the year. Of course, we had kind of a wild ride with President Trump in 2025, because I don't think anyone expected that President Trump was going to be such really a force on the world stage, and was going to make it so much so his mission to be a part of ending wars. And we saw Trump, really get involved in multiple conflicts, not just Israel, and not just in seeking to end the war between Russia and Ukraine, but also, the India-Pakistan conflict, and Thailand and Cambodia, and all of these conflicts, the president was involved in saying, okay, we need peace. Of course, Israel and Iran, huge.
Right, yeah.
The U.S. action there of taking out Iran's 3 main nuclear sites. So it has been.
Yeah, I forgot that happened this year. That was a busy year.
It's been a wild year. But I think, honestly, that was maybe one of the biggest surprises on the political stage out of this first year of the Trump administration, was just seeing really how global Trump has been in his mindset, and saying, okay, yes, America first, but America first policy includes really having the world kind of calm down.
So do you have hope that in 2026 we're going to see the end of the war between Russia and Ukraine, as well as Israel and Palestine?
I have more. Do I? I think I do. I think I have more optimism that there will be a formal peace deal in Israel, between Israel and Hamas, than there will be an end to the war between Russia and Ukraine. And I say that because, and hopefully I am in part wrong. I want to see that formal end to the war, and real movement of a real government established in Gaza. But at the end of the day, when you look at Russia and Ukraine, both sides have just really remained gridlocked in their red lines, specifically around territory. And so many times we've gotten to we're moving forward, things are looking really promising, and then it just feels like we go right back to, nope, there's still that, Putin won't agree to any deal that doesn't give him Ukrainian territory,
right,
and Zelensky won't agree to any deal that gives Russia Ukrainian territory. So, of course, I hope there's movement. We have, the best people in the world, best people in the U.S. government are working on this. But again, it's a little bit unique, though, because of the layers of history. And I think this is something that's hard for Westerners to sometimes fully grasp. But when you have such kind of deep-seated offenses, it can be really hard for, I think, Westerners to understand.
I think that's a good point. This didn't really start in 2022.
I know.
There's a piece of it that did, but like you were saying, there's a whole history behind it that started way before
the
that.
USSR.
Right.
All
and even before that, yeah.
And even before that, yeah. So it's complex. If anyone can get it done, I think, it's folks like Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff that have taken such a strategic lead on these issues. But I won't be holding my breath in 2026, I'll say that.
We'll see. I'm just considering how much has happened over 2025. I guess my hope is 2026 will be just as eventful, so we can see the end of this. I'm going to have hope.
Yes, as you should.
Well, let's lighten things up a little bit on the world stage. Another story that came out of France this year, so definitely lightening things up. Well, to a certain degree.
To a certain degree, yes.
This might be a weird way of phrasing it, but did we make heists great again? When the Louvre was robbed?
Arguably. The number...
Which I know, I don't want to, make light of, something that's criminal activity, but...
Well, I think
it was entertaining.
It was entertaining, and I think what made it so entertaining was how simple it was. That, movie scripts are much more complicated when it comes to high-stakes heists. And this was people in construction vests, pretty much just taking advantage.
They drove up to the side and went in the window.
Like, hey, we'll use this bucket, climb up the ladder. And the fact that there weren't like security, tons of security cameras or alarms going off. It's like, I kind of thought that this was all just part, like, the TV and movies have told me that these places are highly secure. Apparently
Yeah, why didn't they have to go between the laser beams or anything?
Exactly. Like, what is going on? So it did provide, I think, a little bit of comedic relief. I'm sorry, France, not great for you, but...
Maybe we'll find pieces in 2026. I don't think so.
I don't think.
Yeah,
I mean,
especially with something like that, they're deconstructing.
They're
it.
deconstructed, melted down. I mean, it's sad. It's pieces of history.
Right.
Hopefully, though, this will mean that moving forward, that these museums are much more secure in something like this. It's not happening.
Yeah,
yet.
but they do have to strike that balance of you want people to be able to experience these pieces of history as close as possible. So, one fun story from what I got to do this year. This was my, so I would travel to New York this year, and I had never gone to the Met before while I was there. But being so close, like an inch away from like these super famous pieces of art and history, I was almost surprised. I'm like, obviously I'm not going to touch it, but I could.
You were just so compelled. I want to touch it.
A little bit. I did not. But there's something that's just so inspiring, and it really does move you to be close to something so beautiful.
It does.
And maybe it's also now just so striking because our world does not look as beautiful, like our buildings today don't look as pretty as they once did.
True.
So we'll see. Maybe next year we'll start making America beautiful again. But.
Yeah, well, that's something I think that Trump has talked about. And in
the ballroom?
The ballroom, we're building the big, beautiful ballroom. Trump obviously he loves construction. He loves beautiful places. He loves beautiful things. Anything that the president erects is covered in gold, and, just absolutely lovely. And with the year of America 250, celebrating America's 250th anniversary in 2026, I think we're going to see continued projects on the part of the Trump administration of saying, how do we really celebrate both the natural beauty of the U.S., but then also, monuments and those things that have been erected with human hands that celebrate our history and highlight just the unique, beautiful history of our country.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to talk about, stories from this year. So I think in the past, when I've done the recaps, we talked about people who've passed away this year. Instead of doing that, I want to give a small tribute to the penny. So we have lost the penny. There's going to be a funeral apparently on December 20th here in D.C. They're telling everyone, bring a penny with you and dress up in your funeral garb.
That's actually really funny. I kind of want to go to that. I didn't know that was happening. That's fantastic.
Maybe I'll have to go cover it now.
Yeah, that's so great. I saw the news clip of, when they were printing the very last penny. It's like, that's a historic moment. I also wonder who gets that penny. Like, that very last penny ever printed, that's got to be worth a lot of money.
It was. I forgot. I thought at the time there were like the 4 last ones were going to be handed out for special something.
Wow, what an honor
to
find out. That last
I should have looked before.
I'm like, does this mean I should start collecting all the pennies in a jar? Will they, in 50 years, are they going to be worth something? I don't know. But I would say I have many a penny sitting in a junk drawer that just a little bit of a bother. So I'm not too sad to see the end of the penny. I mean, I have such clear memories as a kid of just lots of change. Like in the 90s, there was just change everywhere.
Well, cars had it. I remember when my parents, they had the little change thing in the car.
Yeah. And, you still had to pay tolls with throwing the change in the thing. And, but now, no one pays.
Or did you ever go to a pizza place that had a little arcade thing in the corner and ask your parents for quarters?
Yes, the bubble gum machines and all of that. So, sad.
So that's a sad piece of news.
Change
and then,
dead.
again, because I feel like what I'm doing right now is sad, happy, let's flip it a little bit. Dick Van Dyke just celebrated his 100th birthday.
Which is amazing.
I know. Apparently they sang some Mary Poppins songs and stuff.
Beautiful.
Did you see, he was talking about how he feels like he's still not too old to do one more movie and would love to play Scrooge. And that'd be his dream.
I would love to see him.
So for 2026, please, some producer out there, please make this movie. Please make it happen.
Wonderful. I have great memories. I feel like I was a little bit of a nerd as a kid, and I watched a lot of TV Land, including the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh, really?
So, he's just that was in black and white, so back in the day, but he was such a talented actor, has played so many diverse roles over his career. But someone I think that has done a wonderful job, speaking of happy, a really caring joy that you don't always see that in Hollywood. There's a lot of really intense personalities, and Dick Van Dyke is someone that throughout his whole career to this day, and watching interviews with him at the age of 100, is just a very joyful human.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's a beautiful thing.
Let's talk about what we're hopeful for 2026. Do you have any New Year's resolutions? I've been asking my friends if they have any crunchy resolutions for next year.
Okay. So I started a crunchy resolution in 2025. It's a long journey, and so I'm continuing it into 2026. But I'm trying to get all the toxins out of my home. But I'm trying to do it in a way that's sustainable because it's expensive to get rid of all of your
I'm doing a one at a time thing. So what have you done, and what are you wanting to do?
So I changed my hairspray this year. That's a big deal. As a woman, we use a lot of hairspray, and so I switched to a natural hairspray that I will say is not quite as good, but hey, it does the job. So I'm not breathing in tons of chemicals every morning when I get ready. I've also switched my cleaning products to be more natural. But it just takes time. It takes time to slowly kind of detox all those products. I'm using I feel like about half my makeup is natural, high quality brands. But again, it's expensive, so it takes time. So I want to keep doing that. And I guess in alignment with crunchy things, so a goal that's, again, carrying over from 2025 in full disclosure, but I wanted to get back into running in 2025. Well, I bought the shoes, so we're halfway there, I think.
So you'll at least look good while you do it.
Yeah, so I have the shoes.
What's the running app everyone's been using this year?
Oh, gosh. I should probably know, but since I didn't actually start running, I don't.
So 2026, find her on. Can't remember the name of the app, but
yes. Send me the name of it because I need some accountability to really start running. And along those lines, I'm curious to start rucking a little bit as well in 2026.
Wait, to start what?
So rucking is walking with weight.
Oh, okay.
So there's a brand called there's free promotion for Go Ruck. But my sister and her husband are huge into rucking, it's a special backpack that has usually a 15 to 30 pound weight that sits flush against your back, so it's not as much strain. The backpack is designed to carry the weight, but it burns almost as many calories as running does, and it really strengthens your whole upper body, specifically your back, builds endurance, and it's supposed to be really great for you. And my sister just had a baby 2 weeks ago, and she rucked almost all the way up till when she delivered and had zero back pain during pregnancy.
Wow.
So there you go.
So
rucking.
Yeah. So add that to your list, everyone.
What are your goals for the new year?
I've been trying to slowly also I've started with my kitchen. So last year I got rid of all my plastic Tupperware, replaced that with glass.
Good job.
This year my goal was my task for that was I needed to replace my pans. I was still using Teflon, so that's gone now. I have my new ceramic, a few stainless steel. And then next year, I think I need to start working on the processed foods and getting rid of the food dyes.
Yep.
So if I could cross out red dye 40, that needs to be on the list. I'm saying this out loud so it happens.
It brings some accountability.
That, and then reading, I got back into this end of last year through to this year. So I've read probably upwards of 30 books this year.
Good for you.
And some of them are fun, whatever stuff, but I want to do more freedom-y books.
Okay.
So Locke's Second Treatise was my one for this year. I wanted to do others, and I never got to it. So Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative. Let's see if January I can knock that one out.
Hey, America 250, what a good year to be reading those types of books. Do you get physical copies? Are you an Audible girly, Kindle?
So usually I'll have one book going audio, and then I'm better at because I'm always scrolling on my phone, I started replacing that. I realized I'm going to scroll no matter what. It should at least be good for me. So I'm a scroller. And I have a few paper, but it's so much extra weight. So
It is. Yeah, I'm definitely an Audible. As much as I would like to say I'm, sitting down and reading a hard copy book, I can only really bring myself to do that on vacations. Otherwise, it's Audible in the car.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for helping me wrap up this new year.
Absolutely.
I think we need to do one last toast to 2025.
2025.
So cheers. Thank you so much for joining me. Cheers to everyone else, and Happy New Year.